All right. Welcome to Session 4 of the Overland Roundtable. Of the usual suspects here, I am your host, Dan Cole, and we have Alex Gardner. How you doing, Alex?
Pretty good, Dan.
Excellent. We have Jason Speck from Mountain State Overland. How are you doing?
Good, man.
Taylor Adney from the Overland Adventurers.
How's it going?
And we have a repeat guest. We have Ben, and I'm going to let you say your last name because I think I butchered it last time.
Yeah, it's Ben Barwalters with Rocky Mountain Overland.
Excellent. And hopefully we'll be able to get Brandon Libby on the show, but he is not able to join us right now. But the Session 4 topic that we're going to be discussing is trail communications, kind of what the different options are, why you would pick the different ones, and get into that. But before we do, we have our very first voicemail for the Overland Roundtable. So this is from a previous show on trailers. So here we go.
Hey guys, my name is Brent, and I'm actually calling because I found your podcast, and I find it quite entertaining, at least when I'm doing my drives. I would say I'm a bit of an overlander, maybe an overlander light. I drive a heavy-duty 2500 Dodge Ram that I kind of fixed all up, lifted, got big wheels and everything. My deal is, though, is I drive about 4,000 miles a month for work, and I'm at hydroelectric power dams. I'm in the middle of God's country. I'm all over the place, and I hate staying in hotels. So I've kind of outfitted my rig to basically be able to stay wherever I might find myself. So I live in Oregon. I'm all over Washington, Idaho. I go down into Nevada sometimes, and then normally when I'm not working, I'm finding myself out in the middle of remote places anyways, just enjoying nature. So love to talk a little bit more with you guys. I like a lot of the comments that are going on in the panel that you have. I like listening to the podcast, and looking forward to more good content coming up with you guys. Take care. Bye.
All right, so I'll let you guys discuss this while I try and get Brandon is messaging me. So what do you guys think about our very first voicemail? How about Taylor?
That's very cool. He drives a lot, 4,000 miles a month. That's incredible. It's very cool that he travels to all these different hydro dams and gets to just set up camp.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like he's really using his truck, which is always nice to hear.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that definitely qualifies him as a overlander, not just overlander light. It's he's turned it into a component of his lifestyle, not just a adventure thing, just a weekend.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did he say,
go ahead.
Did he say where he was at? Was he in Utah, Nevada? Where I guess maybe Nevada?
Oregon.
I think he said he lived in Utah.
Oregon.
Oregon, yep.
Oregon, okay. Wow, yeah, he's up in some. Yeah, that's pretty awesome up there.
And having just fairly recently driven through some of those parts of Oregon, I can definitely see how you could cover 4,000 miles pretty quick. A lot of those hydroelectric places are out in the middle of nowhere. I drove through Christmas Valley, and it was a lot of Oregon is just straight up desert. That's all there is to it, high desert. Mm-hmm. We were really out there in the middle of nowhere. So, well, I guess that's a good transition, talking about the middle of nowhere. So, since the topic is trail communications, we have a couple different types, and we'll discuss them a little bit in each. And what we're going to talk about is the Frs Radios, which is those little cheap walkie-talkies that you can find at any big box store. Then CBs, which are pretty popular among off-road crowd, ham radios, and then I think the satellite communications is kind of a broad range because there's a lot of different tools that you can use for that kind of stuff. But Jason, what do you guys usually use when Mountain State Overland goes out on the trail?
Well, we used little Motorola two ways for like the first year and a half, because it was easy for us to communicate between trucks, and then we could actually grab it and we could go out and set up camera and then relay back and forth whether or not we were ready to go, the shot was set up, stuff like that. But we've since moved to CB radios, and we've got those tuned in pretty good. And yeah, I mean, I guess you guys are familiar with CBs and kind of the inconsistencies in some of the mountain terrain and stuff like that. So we may delve into something a little more reliable next year to allow us to communicate better. But regardless of what you're doing, it's still a challenge here, in the East Coast anyway, and some of the haulers and the mountain ranges and stuff like that. But yeah, right now we're running two, what are those, Cobra 75 WXT STs, and we've got some low band layered antennas on some NMO mounts that are mounted to the bumpers and grounded out, and then we've tuned those too. So pretty good. You can always tell on a CB if you're talking to somebody that doesn't have a tuned radio, because it's kind of squashed and kind of muffled. But it's been pretty reliable for us at this point. But we may, like I said, we may delve into something a little more reliable next year.
Well, you said something kind of jumped out. You mentioned being able to tell if somebody's using a tuned radio or not. What do you mean by a tuned radio?
Well, a tuned antenna, rather. So, using an SWR meter to peak it out. I mean, you guys probably know a little bit more about this than I do, but not tuning a radio can actually damage or not tuning an antenna can actually damage the radio too. So we had a close friend here that is more familiar with some radios and stuff like that, and he had his own SWR meter, so we kind of tagged up with him and had him tune us up a little bit. Because we went out actually on our first trip after installing the CBs and had a pretty hard time communicating with each other. After we had things kind of tuned in, we were in pretty good shape there. So.
What kind of antennas were you using?
We have, I think it's a layered. I've got a layered on the truck right now, on the bumper of the truck. It's grounded out. It's a base load antenna, right? If I'm correct. And it rides on one of those mounts that they install underneath of the sheet metal on top of a cop car or something. And it's a very low profile mount. And yeah, so a layered low band, I think it's like a 25, 27 megahertz, something like that antenna. But had really good success with that over the the Fire Sticks and stuff like that, because I think with a Fire Stick you can ultimately tune it a lot better there on top. But if you're hitting tree limbs and stuff like that, I think you can throw it out of adjustment a little bit. So the adjustment in the layered antenna is actually pulling the antenna out and cutting off the bottom of it and then slipping it back down, and then you can adjust it up and down from there at the base. And it's a really bomber install too. It's a very clean install, and if I need to take the antenna off, I can just kind of pop it off and then put a cap on top of it. But I just leave it on there all the time right now. So.
Yeah, I've done a couple installs with some Fire Sticks, and they've been okay. But every Fire Stick I've installed, I've never needed to tune.
Mm-hmm.
I put an SWR meter on it, and they've always been kind of right where I need it to be.
Yeah, that was definitely something with these antennas, is they had to be tuned, and then they give you I think there's like up to 4 inches that you can actually cut on it to adjust it. We had to cut like 3.5 inches off of it based on where we had the antenna mounted. So we probably could have had better success if the antenna was mounted to a plane. But we had pretty good success with the bumper, and tying it in. For a while, I thought that we were pretty far off and it wasn't grounded, but it was. We ended up being able to test it and verify that it was grounded. So yeah, it's working pretty good, like I said, the hardest part about it was is getting both of the vehicles tuned up and so that we can actually communicate more efficiently. So, yeah.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know that, Cobra 75, that's what I run as well. And they're great because the whole CB is basically in the mic. So for me, I don't have my CB kind of plugged in when I don't need it when I'm out on the trails. So I'll just pull the mic, throw it in the glove box, I pull the antenna, strap it onto the roll bar, and it just kind of sits hidden away that way. And when I need it, it's really easy just to plug in. And then the install is great on those 75s because you don't have to have a big thing in your dash or mounted somewhere. It's real clean and easy to do.
Yeah, I guess, there was, kind of reading, obviously we all read reviews when we're looking at gear, all of us do here at the round table, and everybody else too, I'm sure, values good reviews. But something that I was seeing with the 75 was like it's a great CB, it's compact, it's all in the hand, it's all in the mic, but kind of the downside to it was the speaker quality of it, and I was having a hard time kind of figuring that out until I started realizing the people that I was communicating with it would be holding it like right up here, so you're getting that muffled effect, and the people that I would have the best results for would be speaking at 14 to 16 inches from their face. So a lot of that is just kind of educating the team that you're working with and the people that you're communicating with, and that's the biggest piece of it. But I haven't really had, other than that, I haven't really had a problem with the speaker feedback or the voice quality or anything like that. So I've been pretty pleased with it. And then to be able to access weather if we need to, at the click of a button, it's right there. So I like it, yeah.
That's actually what I've got too. And like Ben was mentioning, the connector that the radio and mic and everything connects to is really just like, I don't know, a 1 inch by 1 inch by 3 inch little box that's got the power connector off one side and an input for the antenna and an input for the radio portion. Mm-hmm. And so I have one installed in my Jeep, and I've got another one that I have plans on installing in my wife's Yukon, so that way I can easily swap the same radio between the two. It's not often that I have that, my wife and I aren't using the CBs at the same time, so I just have the one radio that I can transfer between the vehicles with just a mag mount antenna, and it's performed pretty well. Yep. No issues there. So now the problem is, and Ben, do you know what kind of wattage that Cobra radio is broadcasting at?
So CB radios, all of them are limited to 4 watts. So putting a bigger antenna where you can do a dB gain on it can help with that, but they're still pretty restrictive.
Mm-hmm. So best case scenario with the CB with a 1-to-1 SWR, would you know what kind of range that should get somebody?
I mean, if you get a clear line of sight with that, I mean, you could definitely get it, a couple miles on it. But if the conditions are, well, really good, you can get out there. But the reality is that I've been able to look down a valley at somebody and see them, less than a mile away, and I can't get them on the radio, on the CB. On a ham I can, but not the CB. So there's so many variables with it, it's always hard to tell.
Yeah, and I've had a problem too, with mine, getting it actually, getting the power kind of equalized in the pickup too. I get a lot of feedback, when the brake actuator kicks in on the Tacoma, I'm getting a lot of feedback on that, and I've tried to isolate it directly to the battery as opposed to tapping into something in the fuse box. So when the traction control system or something like that on the truck kicks in, I'll get that feedback, across the speaker. But all I got to do is turn the squelch down. And I've tried various sort of, like I said, equalizers or stuff like that to kind of absorb that power boost. But I haven't been able to kind of cut that out of the CB. And I think it might be just something with the Tacoma pickups, because you go on Tacoma World and stuff like that. I spent a lot of time researching that, and a lot of people are having the same problems, and it's just specific to that radio, which is interesting too. So, yeah, you guys got any ideas? I'd certainly be open to that.
Yeah, I've got a friend with a Taco and a 75, and he's had the same problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know something that is fairly common in the ham world is using a filter or some kind of something that you put on the power line that will take out some of that noise, that feedback.
Usually,
You know what I'm talking about, Ben?
yeah, clear bead, and that can, depending on what the problem is, do a kind of a high pass filter on the line and clean it up a little bit. I don't have the problem, so I never tried putting one on.
Yeah, I just gave up. Yeah, I tried that, and I tried the little ferrite cores that you see kind of wrapped around computer cables and stuff like that, and speaker cables. I tried to put those in line, with the power and everything, and I just was like, okay, I'll just turn the squelch down, I'll deal with it, so.
Very good. Okay, well, I think we've talked about CBs enough for now without introducing some of the other potentials. What about the FRS radios? Is that something that you guys have in Australia, Alex?
Nope, I've never heard of it before. It sounds like walkie-talkies, like operating on the 27 megahertz band with a line of sight of maybe 100 or 200 meters. But yeah, we don't use those for overlanding or vehicle communications. We all work on UHF, really. That's what most people use, which is commonly called CB here as well. And they work on the 477 megahertz band, and they give us 80 channels to use. Aside from a few, like there's some dedicated for emergency use and that sort of thing, and through repeaters. But most of the channels, probably about 70 of them, we can use for just vehicle-to-vehicle communications. And depending on your aerial or the unit you're using, you might get up to 20 kilometers out of them if you've got a really good long-range aerial and good flat terrain to broadcast through. So that's what we're all using. I've got a 5-watt GME unit in my car. 5 watts is the maximum legal power for them. And yeah, that's what most people are using. I carry a handheld as well, a 5-watt handheld, just for hopping out of the car and spotting people or checking out tracks ahead.
Excellent. Now, before we come back around to talking about CBs and some of the stuff that I keyed in on what you were mentioning, Alex, is that we did have 2 more people join us here at the roundtable. We've got Brandon Libby. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Glad you could join us. And also, we have a Tom Severin from 4x4training.com. How you doing tonight, Tom?
Great. Good evening to everybody.
I'm glad you could join us. Tom was on the 4x4 podcast a couple years ago, actually, and he really fueled my interest in ham radios. So we haven't started talking about ham radios just yet, Tom, so you haven't missed any of that discussion.
That's great.
All right, Alex, so you mentioned that you're basically CB in that same frequency. You guys have 80 channels. I don't think I have seen any CBs here in the United States or North America that have more than 40 channels.
Yeah, well, it all used to be 40 channel, but they're that popular that I think it all just started to get too crowded. So they halved the bandwidth of each channel and therefore doubled the amount of channels we could have. But with half the bandwidth, I'm not too cluey on bandwidth and that sort of thing, but I think you end up with a bit more interference and voice quality and that sort of thing's impacted a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I still run 40 channel.
Okay. Very cool.
Alex, do you know what, are they the same frequencies as the CB here? Are you down in the 27 megahertz?
No, I was saying just before we used to. We had AM and SSB was the Citizens Band radio in the 27 megahertz, but they're pretty well dead. Not many people use them over here anymore. It's all 477 megahertz.
Okay.
Yeah, so the FRS here is like the 460 is what it's running in.
Yeah, 462.
Yeah, so it's probably a pretty similar thing.
Yep. So, and one of the benefits of using those FRS radios is that they are super cheap and easy to come by. So I know a lot of off-roading clubs and groups will use things like that just because it is readily available. But Tom, you know what some of the limitations are that are facing those FRS users?
Well, sure. First of all, they're limited to, I believe, a half a watt and a rubber ducky. You're not allowed to have a external antenna, so no dB gain on that from the antenna. But they have both the FRS and the GMRS frequencies in there, and as long as you stay within the FRS rules, you can use the GMRS channels as well. They're shared at that level. But good line of sight. Manufacturer claims 22 miles. That's
I've never seen that.
no, I know. I don't expect it either. But for car to car, that higher frequency I think is a lot clearer than the CB in the 27 megahertz, and it works really well. I think the only downside is the fact that you have to hold the radio the whole time, or pick it up and put it down, and you got a speaker about the size of a postage stamp. But they're clear, and I use them for all my car-to-car communications on adventure trips because I can carry a whole bag full of them, and if anybody doesn't have a radio, we can put everybody on the same system very easily.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's important just to give a little bit of education to the users because they'll hold that walkie-talkie or the mic for any of the radios right up to their mouth, and you get a lot of over-modulation. It gets that garbled sound. So that may be sometimes just educating somebody can help clear up some of that.
Well, yeah, it depends on the person and the mic. Some people have to hold a little closer than others. And the biggest problem I have is the VOX, the voice activation. There's an awful lot of options on these radios, and people don't know their capabilities. They don't know how to turn on and off. And if somebody's got the VOX on, it's constantly interrupting everybody.
That's true. I hadn't even thought about that, but making sure you have the right settings just is kind of basic, but that certainly makes a big difference.
Yeah, we had a VOX function on one of the handheld radios, and the girls weren't aware of it. And it was on one of our trips we blew the clutch on the beach, and the girls were less than impressed, and they were letting each other know how upset they were with this VOX handheld in their hand. So be careful what you say.
A little hot mic situation, and somebody's broadcasting while they're not planning on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Well, so let's go ahead and transition now, talking about ham radios. We've talked about how FRS is limited to a half watt, and that'll get you presumably 2 miles, and then CBs, which will get you a little bit farther, but they're limited to 4 watts. Now, the ham radios is where you really put your big boy pants on for the trail communications game, and this is a real new world for me. I got my call sign just a few months ago, back in April, I guess, and so I have really been learning a lot since getting into that. But Ben, I know you've got a lot of experience, and Tom, you definitely have a lot of experience as well. So, Ben, let's start off with you. Why would somebody want to switch to a ham radio as opposed to the CB or FRS?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. It's definitely the big boy communication out there. My mobile in the Jeep, I'm pushing 50 watts on that. So I can hit repeaters in the area that are 60, 70 miles away with it without too much problem. And then if we go simplex, so I'm not off of the repeater, backcountry, I can still go miles and miles and miles without any problem. But it really gives me a really clear communication, unlike the CB. It gives you a lot better range than the FRS radios. The real downside to it is you got to be licensed because you're putting out so much power. The FCC requires you to pretend like you know what you're talking about, and that's what really keeps everybody from jumping on it. The good thing is because you don't have a lot of yahoos jumping on, it's much more sophisticated group of individuals using them, which is a good thing. But the test really turns people off because you have to do it. What they don't realize is that to get the license, go take the test is actually really pretty easy. 35 questions, multiple choice, and what they don't realize is that all the questions and answers are actually online, and you can sit there and study them until you get them right. So they actually give you, I think it's 10 different tests, depending, it's just the luck of the draw when you sit down. So you can go to a test school, hamstudy.org, and sit there and just take the test until you get it right. Recommend in Overland, we've been pushing a lot of people towards the ham, and I think there's a good chunk of us on ham now. And I don't think we've had any member not be able to pass the test the first time going through. So that's been really great on the trail because we're just getting a lot of great communication out there from the front of the back of the pack to the back. People coming into camp late at night, things like that. We're really reaching out, and it's always crystal clear. It's just like being on a cell phone.
Yeah, I totally passed the test through blunt force. I just went through the flashcards and took practice tests until I could finally pass. And I walked out of the testing center. I now have my certificate. I don't have my call sign yet, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben, what is the difference between ham and CB or FRS? What makes it so crystal clear, and what makes it sound like you're talking on a cell phone?
So it's definitely the frequencies you're running on, and then the technology that's in the radios is just a lot better, and they're made, the radios in general tend to be made a lot better. So it's giving you, it's kind of the difference between like an analog and a digital world, even though the hams are still analog. Everything in them is just giving you a much better quality. And we've had a lot of people be on CBs for a long time. You kind of get that scratchy noise to it. You switch over to the ham, and it's just, usually perfect.
Very cool. Tom, in regards to ham, aren't there a strict set of rules in place for using ham radio once you've got your license, and once you get on the waves, there's a strict set of rules you need to follow, right?
Well, there are some rules. It's like a big party line, and so the FCC lays out some guidance that you aren't allowed to interfere with people, and there's a lot of courtesy that has to be done, not to tie it up too long, let somebody else do it, and you are required to identify your call sign at least every 10 minutes on there. And there's certainly probably an FCC rule as far as swear words, but certainly the hams themselves enforce kind of no 10 codes, just open, clear communication and so forth on it. If you get onto a repeater and you're having a net of some sort, like I said, that's a party line kind of thing, and you really need to have a net controller and need to be recognized to talk on it. Most of the nets, really the idea of a net is kind of to practice. It may have some additional purposes like announcements or club meetings or whatever, but at the very base level, the purpose is to practice. See if your gear works, you can get in, give everybody a chance to talk, even if it's nothing more than to say their call sign and good evening. A lot of people have mic fright when they first start. And to get used to this idea that you have a net controller and you need to be recognized by the net controller before you talk. So it coordinates the traffic. And all of that is preparation for, say, an emergency or for running a helping with a race, bicycle race or a foot race or something like that.
Very
So
cool.
you mentioned the net calls or the nets, and that was actually one of the things that really caught my attention when we first spoke, because you actually help host one of the nets, the Outdoor Adventure Net, and I listen into that as often as I can. It wasn't real conducive to my time schedule before, but now that I'm on the other side of your time zone where it's hosted, I get to listen in a little bit more. But can you tell me a little bit more about like something like the Outdoor Adventure Net, because it uses some pretty cool technology to really spread it out?
Yeah. Well, hams are pushing the technology all the time. So I mean, your basic idea of over-the-air radio waves to to a repeater tower and it having a footprint is great, but the hams have been pushing the internet as far as they can go with it, and there's two capabilities that are available today. One is Echolink, and it's pretty much like a Skype without the video. It's VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. You have to be a licensed ham to use it. You download a program, and you can set up your space bar as the push to talk button, and you can connect it to any repeater tower that has the software that's necessary to Echolink. So they probably have a computer up there near the radio, that's the repeater radio, and it's hooked to the internet. And once you're connected to the repeater, anything you say goes out on the repeater, and you hear anybody else that's talking on the repeater. And by the way, you can also use it just like point-to-point, simplex with another ham, much like Skype, just two hams talking to each other, really not using the airwaves at all. The other technology is is called IRLP, Internet Radio Project Linking. That doesn't sound right. The P, I'm not sure. Internet Radio
Linking Project, I think.
Yeah, Linking Project. That's what it is. Okay, yep. IRLP, and basically it's a piece of software. Again, you got a computer and you have internet, and each repeater that chooses to set up IRLP is assigned a node number in a central repository. And you can connect two repeaters together by the internet, repeater to repeater. So all you do is you can get on your mobile radio, connect to the repeater, basically hold down the mic and type in the node number that you want to go to, and it'll connect that tower to the other tower. Now, anybody that's within the footprint of your repeater and everybody that's in the footprint of the other repeater can hear each other out there on the radio. So anything, if we hooked up, say, Portland, Oregon, everybody on their radios in Portland, Oregon can come into Southern California, and everybody here in Southern California can hear them. But
yeah, I was actually, while I was working on my trailer in the garage north of Kansas City, I had my ham radio on, and I could listen to the conversation happening there in Southern California where you're at with just my little $35 Bofang handheld radio.
How were you connected? What were you connected to?
I was hitting a repeater in Leavenworth, Kansas.
Okay, I don't know how that. I don't think that repeater's ever been hooked into ours. I'm not sure how they were doing that one.
Well, then I don't know either. Like I said, I have no idea what I'm doing.
All right. Well, so they've taken this one step further, and they have something they call reflectors. But a reflector is nothing more than another computer somewhere, and we use the Western reflector. And reflectors are given a node number, and they have 10 channels. We've been given, the Western reflector is 9250 is the node number. We've been told we can use 9251, which is one channel within that reflector. And we generally have 8, 9, 10, 11 repeaters that connect during the 2-hour net that we have. So each repeater has to initiate it, but they can then connect to the reflector 9251, and once they're all hooked up, all 10 or 11 repeaters, anybody in the footprint of those repeaters can hear each other.
So, okay, now I am here in Fairbanks, and there's a couple repeaters near me. So how do I go about getting those repeaters to connect to the repeater that you're going to be doing the outdoor adventure net on?
Well, you're not gonna come directly to our repeater. You're gonna go to the western reflector. So
Okay.
we'll hook to the western reflector. You'll hook to the western reflector. So what you need to do is find who the repeater trustee is, who's responsible for it, and you have to get their agreement that you can hook up the repeater 7:30 Pacific time on Thursday evening. And the other part of it is they have to understand that you're going to be hooked up for 2 hours. We go from 7:30 to 9:30, so that's a big commitment. And you could have conflicts with other nets or other needs that they have. But anyway, all you need to do, if you get permission, is just type in 9251, and it'll connect it up. The repeater administrator may have some codes that you have to use first. It can be as simple as you hold the mic, the push the talk button down, you hold it down, and while you're holding it down, you type in pound 9251, and you release it, and that sends a command through and hooks everything up. But sometimes they require you type in some code that only they know, whatever. And then to disconnect, you just repeat the process by holding it down and typing in, say, a lot of times they use 73. You just type in pound 73, or just 73, and it'll disconnect it.
Yeah, and 73 is part of the code language that hams are typically use. That's goodbye or the end of conversation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's that's like sincerely yours, or something like that. Just at the end of the if you're all done, it's usually wish you 73 KI6FHA.
Gotcha. So if somebody, one of the things that has kind of concerned me before is that there are fewer people using ham radios, and if I needed to get a help call out and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, which forms of communication is going to be the most likely to be able to get help?
The satellite phone.
Exactly. So that's one of the reasons I have redundant comms. In my vehicle when I'm out, I've got my cell phone, I've got the CB radio, I've got the ham radio now, and I also carry a DeLorme InReach, the two-way satellite communicator. Now that can't get phone calls out, but I can at least send messages to people, and also it's got the SOS function where you just arm the switch and hit the SOS button, and it calls the cavalry to come in and get you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you've got it interfaced with your smartphone, then you can use the text messages off the satellite to anybody you want.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think like the InReach, the spot units, they're great. And my one thing that I don't like about them is just the fact that you have to pay a monthly fee, and especially if it's just an emergency device. So what I actually carry is a PLB, a personal locator beacon, and that's something that you don't pay a monthly fee on, but it's strictly a 911 call. So if I pop that, it goes both to satellite and on RF, and it gets picked up by aerial aircraft and things like that for homing capabilities. And that's a great thing because I don't have to pay a lot of money for it.
Yeah, that one has to be.
Subscription on. I'm sorry,
Go
Tom. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that one has to be registered with the FCC. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, and it's free. So when you get it, you have to register it every 2 years. Just keep your registration up so they know whose beacon is going off. But yeah, it's small. I keep it in the glove box all the time, and I never have to worry about it. And yeah, they're great from that standpoint. But again, it's only the 911 call. When you hit it, the whole cavalry is coming.
Yeah.
Jason,
what is
what
the
were you gonna say?
subscription on the? What's the subscription on the Spot these days?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't have either Spot or InReach, but they're two different products that have the same concepts.
Yeah, so I have the InReach, and it's actually the first generation InReach unit, and I think they've got a couple different plans. You can use the annual plan, a monthly or like a quarterly plan, and so I use it kind of seasonally, so I don't pay the full year option, but then you also get a range of options depending on how many messages you tend to send. But I think I ended up paying $15 a month, and that gets me 10 messages, unlimited tracking, and then the SOS coverage. So that means I can hit the tracking, and it'll send out a link to whoever I need to, or I can send it to Facebook. Some of you guys may have seen it when I was traveling through the wilderness of British Columbia and the Yukon Territory where there is no cell phone signal, and it would ping my location on a map every 10 minutes or 30 minutes, however often you want it to send, because the more often you send, the more it kills the battery. But that way, friends and family could kind of keep track of where we were, especially driving through British Columbia where it was wildfire season. We almost got trapped there. But then again, through the Yukon Territory where we were a long ways outside of cell phone range.
Yeah, I think, as often as we're getting out and doing things, and everybody else too, I mean, when your families can't go with you, having some way to, kind of communicate with your families and let them know that you're doing okay, whether it is sending a beacon, out through a Spot or, using the text message capabilities of, something like the InReach is something kind of user-friendly for the family, for the family side of it and family communication piece of it when we're out of range.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just, the peace of mind of knowing where somebody is. Like my family, my wife's family, absolutely didn't really have anything important to tell us. They just kind of wanted to see where we were along the trip. And that way they don't have to try and get a signal through the middle of nowhere. They can just open it up, see on the map where we were 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, so another option for that, now the Spot and InReach, because they're satellite, are definitely better. But in the ham world, what a lot of people are using is APRS, which is the Automated Packet Reporting System. And what it does is it basically sits on a dedicated frequency, and it can send out your GPS location, and you can actually send text messages through the radio. Now, it's still kind of limited, but again, it's free because I'm a cheapskate. But we've been in the backcountry, and it hops between repeaters. So it'll go to a small repeater, and maybe another small repeater, and then it goes to some of the bigger repeaters and broadcasts out. So when we're actually sending text messages to a phone instead of another radio, it then goes to a gateway, which is a computer that will translate it from the radio world to the internet world and send it to their phone, and vice versa. And actually receive them.
Now, APRS will also allow for tracking just like the Spot will, right?
Yep. So if you go to aprs.fi and punch in somebody's call sign that has it, you can see where they are in there. And we were up in Wyoming a couple months ago on a trip, and we were actually on low power because we were just doing trail communication with the rigs. And somebody was able to pick up our APRS signal, saw where we are, saw what frequency we were on, tuned into us, and realized we were going down a dead-end road that on our map said went through, got on the radio and said, hey, you guys are heading towards a locked gate. And we were able to divert around it. Now, it was a little creepy having somebody we don't know exactly where we were.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was. You can see where other people are. So on my radio, I can look up a call sign and see how far away they are and things like that.
Yes, that security is one of the issues. Is people know some people won't run it. Same with Spot, because it lets others know where you are and that you're not home, etc.
Yeah, and what you can do, I mean, what you can do with APRS, or at least in my radio, is I can actually say don't use like really accurate GPS coordinates. They would know if I'm not home, but they wouldn't know exactly where I was.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with APRS is, unless you buy it already integrated into a radio, it's a kind of a clumsy system, and it's kind of kludged together. It takes a lot of effort to keep it running. But usually, what what I've been trying to do is integrate it with my laptop. So, if you have a terminal node controller, you can interface it to the laptop, and it'll put your location on a map on the laptop, and it'll put the location of everybody else in the area on the laptop as well, on your map. But it's I don't know. I'm not real enamored with it personally.
Yeah, it's definitely, it is a little kludgy if you don't get it built in. We've got some guys running it, and they've been doing okay. If you're on Android, there's APRS Droid, and that will do all the mapping for it as well.
Yeah.
But it's helped several times, because we'll have a group that gets into camp and they're waiting for other people. We can see where they are, and they know where our camp is, things like that. So it's been good, but again, it's definitely not great.
Yeah, I just got a new radio because I have been using a little cheap Bofang, but now I have a 50-watt mobile unit, and it actually does have APRS built in. I haven't installed it yet, so I can't attest to how it works.
What did you get there?
It is, hold on.
Is it a Kenwood or a Yaesu?
Neither.
Neither. It is the VGC, the Vero Telecom. I have the box right here. But it broadcasts 50 watts output. It's a dual band, has crossband repeat. It's got the APRS. Well, there's an APRS kit. It actually has a Bluetooth module on it, so then you can pair it with the phone and actually see the map and see the locations instead of just having the grid coordinates come across on the control screen. So I'm looking forward to getting this installed.
What was the radio again?
It's the Vero Telecom, the VR6600 Pro. Right here. So it is a knockoff of, I think, a Kenwood unit, or it's similar anyways.
It looks kind of like the Yaesu 350.
Yeah, somebody else mentioned that. So.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know how that works. I've never seen it before.
Yeah, I happened to find it on Amazon, and it sells for $400, and that comes with the radio, the mic, the power cables, and the GPS puck, and the Bluetooth module. So everything you need to get going for 50 watts and have APRS. And APRS is something that I'm pretty interested in using here, because that's the thing about satellite communications. Once you get up near the poles, it gets a little wonky because of where the satellites are. The satellite constellation doesn't cover the poles really well. So I've actually heard that the constellation that the Spot runs on is unusable once you get up near the Arctic Circle and above, which is a little concerning. I'm glad that I have the DeLorme. The DeLorme reps tell me that theirs do operate up close above the Arctic Circle.
No, I think they're running on the.
But in talking with some of my But in talking to some of my Army buddies, some of the Army communications don't work. Some of the satellite-based communications don't work real reliably once you get that far north. So APRS is something that I definitely want to have as just another redundant form of communications.
Yeah. You can never have too many redundancies.
Yeah. What's the old slogan go? Two is one and one is none.
Yeah.
So I think I've got like 6 different forms of communication now. So
now it's 6 is 5, 5 is 4, 4 is 3.
Hopefully that's how the math works. Unfortunately, I imagine if you have that many redundant systems, probably 3 of them aren't going to work. So they just go away real fast. I saw earlier here in our internal chat, Brandon, you had a question?
Yeah, I was curious what kind of components do you need? I know there's a ton of setups from, if you want to just go crazy and try to talk to people on the moon, down to, you just want some small, portable, easy-to-use system. I'm curious what that is.
Yeah, so what we've really been pushing, because they're so cheap, is the Bofang UV5R. On Amazon, you can get it, $29, $30, free shipping if you got Prime. And those as a little handheld are great little units. They're cheap enough. I actually carry, I think I've got 2 of them that just stay in the Jeep at all times. And they make it through several days on the trail, so you don't have to worry about charging them if it's just a single day out there and things. We've got several members that will put a bigger antenna on them, and that really extends, especially if you throw a mag mount, throw it on the roof. That gives you a lot more range, some more power on it, and for $30 you just can't beat it. So we've got a lot of people, that's the first radio that they start with, and then if you're going to move up to a good mobile unit, depending on what you're looking for, if you want a dual band or a dual radio, they go all the way up to 700, but you can get one off eBay or a Craigslist that will probably get you 50 watts for $200. They'll easily get the job done. And then what you see a lot of is people having 100 antennas stacked on their car, and really you need one antenna for each radio. So I'm running a Kenwood 710, and I've got one antenna for it, and that's pretty much the only antenna plus the radio, the AM/FM antenna, and then the CB if I have that antenna on. So you don't need a lot of antennas. I'd suggest don't worry about turning your vehicle into a porcupine.
Yeah, but you're not going to win the antenna war that way.
Exactly.
Start looking like the CIA rolling down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all seen those guys, with the antennas just everywhere. And I saw a guy pulled off with some kind of an antenna that was on a tripod or something that he set up, and I don't know where he was trying to talk, but I was like...
Yeah, we should touch on, there's kind of, so when you get your license, there's 3 levels of license. There's your tech license, the lowest base, your general, and then your extra. The general and extra are really going to open up the HF frequencies or your high frequencies, and those are what you're going to use to talk really long range, across the U.S., across the world type things. For overlanding stuff, all you need is a 2 meter or maybe a 70 centimeter radio, and you only need the tech license to get that. And then those antennas are small. So I'm running an 18-inch diamond antenna for mine. The one on the tripod, he was probably running an HF unit, and he was trying to get some real distance. He's talking hundreds or thousands of miles away with it.
Yeah, actually, if at least out here in the West, if you want to hit a repeater and you're out off-road, the handheld is probably not going to get out for you. They're usually 5 to 7 watts. You're going to need a mobile with the 50 watts to hit a repeater. But there's repeaters everywhere out here. But like in Death Valley, I can't hit a repeater with just a mobile radio. And so I carry a Irlp and a beam antenna. It's built out of essentially arrows. The tubing, Easton arrow tubing that you use. And it looks like the old style TV antennas. It screws all together. But if I'm stationary, I can put up that antenna and point it at a repeater where I know the repeater is and get some chance of hitting it. gotten out about at 95 miles before using that thing.
Wow, what kind of antenna was that you said?
Well, it's called an Elk. The brand name's Elk antenna. It's actually a Yagi style antenna, and I have a Schedule 40 PCV pipe, and it just sits on the end of that, and I can put 2 sections together and get it up above the truck. I just lash it to the truck, and then I just have to point it at the where I think the repeater is, and it I get a lot of gain that way and get out to something. But it folds up in a little bag that's maybe 20 inches by long, 3 or 4 inches wide, and it's pretty flat. But at least in this area, there's not a lot of cell service. You can get away from the cell pretty quickly, and you can get to places where your mobile radio won't hit any repeaters at all. So that's where the HF would be good if you wanted to make that next step. But that's a big commitment, because now you've got to study for the general, which is the next level up, and the equipment that you need is a lot more expensive.
Right, and I think, Ben and you and I were talking about this when we met down in Colorado Springs. At that point, the ham radio is becoming more of a hobby than just a tool that somebody like ourselves is going to be using it as. So I think really the next logical step is just to step up to a good ham radio, something that's pushing out 50 watts on frequencies that you're likely to find the most people hanging out on.
Yeah. By the way, if you go with a dual band, which is the 2 meter and the 70 centimeters, usually 50 watts on the 2 meters is typically what the radio has in it. But if you go with a 1 band 2 meter radio, some of those will you can get 70 watts, maybe even 80, depending what brand it is. Look around for it if you want to get something a little more powerful.
Yeah, so just to touch on that, the 2 things that are going to give you range are your wattage, so how much power you're pumping out, and then the antenna and the quality of the antenna. And so your antennas are rated, we'll say it's a 3 dB gain or a 9 dB gain, and every 3 dB increase doubles the power of that antenna, or the range of that antenna. So you might see something, a 9 dB is going to be significantly better than a 3 dB.
Okay, so let's back up just a second, make sure we capture that. You said every 3 decibels or dB of antenna gain doubles your power output? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So if you have an antenna that's giving you 3 dB a gain, instead of the equivalent-ish of 50 watts, it's now 100 watts. And then you go to 6, and now that's 200 watts. Now you go to 9, that's 400 watts.
Gotcha. So that gain is gets you some exponential growth in what you can do with the radio.
And then that also, where you can put a lot of wattage behind something, 1,000 watts, 2,000 watts, and you can really push power. But if you can't listen, if they're not pushing the same power, you don't get it. Or if you have a better antenna, it's going to listen as well as push. So what was happening there was with that Yagi antenna, that's a very directional antenna, it's very sensitive on what it's listening to within that range.
Interesting. Now when you're aiming an antenna like that, how precise do you have to have it aimed? I mean, it's not like a rifle. I mean, it's got to have some sort of, some acceptable range.
And that really comes down to the antenna, the specific antenna.
Yeah, the one I'm using, it isn't that precise. I'll take try and get a lat lawn on the repeater tower, and then draw a line from where I am to it, and get the magnetic reading on it. And I'll try to aim it there, but if I'm 2 or 3 degrees off, it generally doesn't make much difference. Could even be 5 degrees. one thing you could do is just have somebody talking, and you can just rotate the antenna a little bit, just just slightly, a little bit each way, and see if you get any improvement.
Well, yeah, and a good example of what you can do with a good directional, good Yagi antenna is people will take a UV5R at 5 watts and use a program to see when the space station is coming overhead, and you can literally talk to the space station on 5 watts with a really good antenna.
I think you can do it with a handheld, couldn't you, on the space station?
Yeah.
5 watts with just a rubber ducky, probably. I would think it's just straight up there, line of sight.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about the space station. We think of distance in terms of horizontal distance, and it's easy to reach the end of that distance. But if you're talking something going straight up into space, it's not more than just a couple miles straight up.
Yeah, we get a lot of hang gliders out here. I think they're hang gliders, or maybe they're those little
Gliders.
Yeah, whatever they're with the motor or something. But anyway, a lot of them are using ham radios and they talking to each other, and they're way up there, and their coverage is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We can hear them for miles.
Yeah, they probably don't typically have as many geographic things in front of them or blocking them out. They're looking down on a lot of that stuff.
Yep.
That is one way of overcoming the things in your way. Just get above them.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a question. If you are out on the trail with your buddies and you're using ham radios and you want to talk just within your group, you're not looking to reach out for help or anything like that, you're just wanting to talk to everyone inside your group, can you just grab a random frequency, or is there a certain frequency you should go to for something like that? Or is there a certain range of frequencies?
Going back to your rules that you asked about. Here, go ahead and answer.
So every state has what they call a band plan, and that band plan kind of divides up the ham radio frequencies to specific uses. So they'll say this range is for repeaters, this range is for CW or your Morse code. And then what they'll do, if you're just talking within your group, you want it to be on simplex. So you're just talking radio to radio, not radio to repeater. And they will then say what kind of offset they want. So basically you can go look up and say these are the designated simplex frequencies for whatever state you're in. And that is the proper way to do it. And then what we do on the trail for all of us running 50 watts is we turn our wattage down to 5 watts, so we're not blasting hundreds of miles. We just try to keep it as contained as we can.
Okay, so what if you're traveling across a few different states like Dan just did? Are you going to have to stop and check your frequencies for each state that you travel through and change them accordingly?
Yeah, so it's not a hard and fast rule that you have to be within that band plan. It's just a highly recommended thing. So something like that, driving state to state, I probably just grab a simplex frequency for Colorado, get everyone on it, and drive through.
Yeah. There's a very common one is 146460, but there's some places where that's actually one of the repeaters. The repeater is transmitting on that frequency, and if you're within the range, you could be messing them up a little bit.
Well, sounds like anybody running a repeater like that probably should rethink their practices.
Well, that's what the band plan is all about. Is if you're going to set up a repeater, you go to the amateur organization for that area that's responsible for the band plan, and they will assign you a pair, to the frequency, the in and out frequencies. And the whole idea is to keep everybody from interfering with each other, and they can reassign those repeater pairs as long as they have enough distance between them. So there's no interference. Say 100, 200 miles apart, they can reuse that same band or pair, and that's what So the idea is to establish some simplex frequencies that are not going to be one of the repeater frequencies. And the other thing, in the U.S. there's a national calling frequency on simplex. I think it's 146,520, and that's a national simplex that anybody can use. It's generally, if you were traveling and you just wanted to set it on that, and somebody saw your antenna or your antenna farm that you got, they might figure you're ham and try calling you on one on that frequency. Now the idea is that you should probably not tie it up too long. If you're going to have a conversation, maybe they're traveling sort of in the same direction, you might want to switch to another simplex, but there is that common frequency.
Well, and I've noticed that with the dual band radio, you could have one listening into that one frequency, and I know a lot of ham radio guys, they'll have it as a sticker on their vehicle or on their license plate, even have your call sign on the license plate, and that way somebody could reach you and start a conversation there, and then I think there is a code, a Q something something code, that'll mean you're changing to a different frequency, and then you could carry on that conversation without tying up that same frequency band.
Yeah, right. But there's no. You don't really need to know all those Q codes, but you wouldn't have any preset second channel. If it's somebody you just met, you'd have to say, hey, why don't we switch over to 146, 570 or 146,460, something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually just recently ordered some license plates with my call sign on it. My home of record is Idaho, so I paid $5 to get new license plates for my vehicle and the registration is good until my call sign expires.
In California, I think it's $15 for the vanity, and unlike other vanities, you don't have to repay that each year. I think a vanity plate in California, there's a $25 charge on top of the normal licensing every year, unless it's a ham call sign, and then it's a one-time fee, and it's good for, I don't know, I guess as long as you have that plate.
Yeah, so essentially I paid $5 for 9 years worth of vehicle registration for one of my vehicles.
Yeah, you're a brave man. I like to be a little more incognito than that, but
yeah, see, I drive around a vehicle that's pretty well branded with the 4x4 podcast logo, and I also live somewhere that has armed guards. So and anybody that sees me driving around is already a pretty bold soul. They're an adventuresome spirit, so there's not too many of those. The crazies that exist down in the lower 48, so should be good to go.
Actually, don't escaped felons usually go into the wilderness to live to try to get away from the cops?
That's true. However, when I'm going out that far in the wilderness, I'm going armed.
What did you do?
Either for the crazies or the furry creatures.
Yeah, the grizzlies.
I'm going to try and poke the grizzly with the antenna, so I got to get a big one.
Let me know how that works for you.
Dan, you brought up an interesting aspect about having the two radios in one so you can listen on both sides. I've actually installed two of those, two dual radios in, so I can actually listen to 4 different frequencies simultaneously. If they're all going, of course, I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what I'm listening to. But, what I can do is I can set up one radio with the car-to-car frequency that I'm using with my group, and I can also set the other side up for simplex, but with my tail gunner, and then I can set the third frequency on another radio to a local repeater, especially if I'm expecting to join up with somebody or I want to monitor it. And that's about as far as I can go with it. I still have one more built-in radio, just by the nature of the fact that I have I have 2 radios. Each came with 2, actually 2 radios inside of them. But it's handy, and then it gives me the backup too. I noticed. Well, one day I decided to drive underneath this arch, and I just ripped my antenna right off.
Oh no.
Well, I just switched the other radio for the rest of the trip. I mean, it was but I just tore it off. The awning on the side of my vehicle has a few cuts in it, but anyway, I do have.
Well, so it may be worth mentioning again, Tom, that you are not the typical off-road or overlander. I mean, you've made a full-time business out of your love for adventure. So you're leading quite a few people out into the Nowheresville. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, most of my business is four-wheel drive training, but I also do quite a number of overland or adventure trips. I was out scouting this week. I went to the SEMA show in Vegas for the first couple of days, and then decided to try and do Vegas to Carson City on dirt. And well, let's say our eyes were bigger than our stomach, but we we did a lot of dirt. I did 1,500 or 1,400 miles this week, and I didn't get anywhere near the trails done that I had originally planned to do. The last trail we did was going into Carson City was the Pony Express Trail, just that last section from alternate US 95, and it was a mud fest. It was I put $15 through the quarter machine today, and I still or car wash, and I still don't have all the mud off. And first out, I got stuck. I mean, I dropped right in the mud hole, and well, I hadn't aired down.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so I had to air down, and I locked it up, and this rocked, and it came right out. But it was a lot of fun this week. But yeah, I'm leading people, and I feel certain responsibility for communication. So I've got car-to-car communication. It's really important. I do a lot of narrating on history and geography, and as well as trail obstacles and so forth. I got to keep track of my tail gunner. He's counting people. I haven't lost too many people yet, but
I'm sure that's not good for business anyway.
No,
so you want to keep that limited.
And and anyway, then the whole communication emergency plan and so forth. So I carry a satellite phone, plus the ham radios. I haven't, because of the satellite phone, I haven't felt the need for Spot or InReach or a PLB. But those are all good options. I mean, starting. I have a CB because occasionally I've moved away from CB, but the Easter Safari guys in Moab once a year. I mean, they do all their runs on CB, and every once in a while I'll meet up with a club that I got to use CB. But I carry in excess of 12 of those FRS radios. They're so small, they're not that expensive. I can just throw them in a bag, and I go to Costco and buy huge packs of batteries. A long time ago, I wore out the rechargeable, and the rechargeable didn't work for me after a while anyway. I take out. I think where they quit on me was with. I had an Air Force group, MOD group, and we went out for 6 days, and there was no way I could recharge that many batteries every day, and keep them, so I switched over to alkaline. Yeah. By the way, you don't want to go out with the MOD guys. They're just a little too aggressive.
You might be surprised. Some of the guys I hang out with are fairly aggressive types.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Hey, Brandon, I saw you had a question. What was that?
Oh, since we're talking about CBs again, can a ham radio communicate with any other frequencies, such as CBs or FRS or anything like that, or are you strictly
Well, the
stuck
CB
with their ham?
the CB is too far away for most hams because it's down at 27 megahertz here. And the ham, for the tech, the one we're using mostly is in the 144 to 148 megahertz, and the GMR or the 70 centimeters is what is it, Brandon? 440 to 448. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. So that's very close because the FRS is 462. So if you wanted to run an illegal ham radio, it could be done. It's close enough, and the antenna would probably work as well because you're still within the specs. But the ham radio has a diode on it that prevents you from switching outside your approved bands.
Well, so that's one of the funny things is those Bofang radios. Actually, you can reach into those FRS frequencies, but I think the caveat that's always given is don't use the radio for frequencies it's not intended to be used. However, you also want to be able to use whatever you need to in an actual emergency. So you got to maximize your abilities and know what it can do.
Yeah.
And then be smart using that.
In an emergency, you can use any radio, any frequency, licensed or unlicensed, if it's a true emergency.
Yeah. And so that's a good reason to have one of those cheap Bofang radios, is because even if you're not a ham, you can listen on the radio, kind of get a feel for how it operates while you're studying. So then once you have your call sign, you can start using it and feel confident. But in the meantime, have it there as your fallback safety plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, my Kenwood in the Jeep, that will receive FRS and GMRS frequencies. I haven't done the mod so I can transmit on it, but I can monitor them if I needed to out of the box.
Yeah, I have a Yaesu 8800, and I can probably receive anything from 108 up to, I don't know, 350 or something. I mean, the receive range is huge.
Yeah.
I can monitor aircraft if I want to.
That's awesome. We got one more question. This one came in from Sean Caldwell. He is a fan of the 4x4 podcast. I want to bring the question in just before we wrap up the show. And his question is, what antenna do we recommend for mounting on an XJ? And I think we can probably even broaden up that question and just say, what are some of the principles or some of the things we need to think about when mounting an antenna? And this applies really to CBs and ham radios. So what are some of the thoughts on that?
Well,
the best place to mount an antenna is right in the middle of the roof. We can use the roof as a ground plane, but not everybody wants to do that. So usually higher is better. Instead of putting it right next to the tailgate or something where the vehicle will block the antenna, is preferred.
So do those same rules apply if you're using just a magnetic mount? You still want to have it right in the middle, or does it matter if it's at the front or the back of the vehicle, since it's really doesn't have a grounded connection to the vehicle, I don't think, with a mag mount.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't matter as much. Just higher is better.
Yeah. We could have, they have discussions like this for hours and hours. One of the
geeky discussions.
Pardon?
Very geeky discussions.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to do is refer you to the Outdoor Adventure USA website, which is oausa.net, which stands for outdooradventureusa.net. We have, whenever we do a net, we put up what we call our net preview, and we're able to post pictures and information to support the discussion. So we can, anybody that's near a computer when we're doing a net can refer to the pictures or that for more information. And we try to record them as well and put that on the website later on. And there were two nets recently. One was a 2-meter radio roundup, and the other one was ham mobile radio install. In fact, that might even gone over 2 nets. Well, we talked about all those kind of issues. Good clean power. The factors in terms of where you put the radio, and the antenna installation. It's a discussion like this. It goes all over the place, but a lot of good ideas. I don't remember much about antennas. I put them wherever I can, usually.
Yeah. So, and I do want to encourage everybody that can to go and check out the Outdoor Adventure USA net calls and check out some of the previous ones, because the list of topics that you guys cover, I'm going to have to start pulling from some of these topics for the 4x4 podcast, because you're talking about batteries, dual batteries, bug-out bags, let's see, driving on sand and dunes, outdoor medicine, camp kitchens. There's just a ton of great topics. So I'm going to have to start checking these out.
That was something I was going to ask is, Tom, all these nets that you're talking about, they're recorded and put on your website, right? And that's where you're seeing them, Dan?
Yeah, yep, that's what I'm looking at right now, actually.
And what was that website one more time?
It's oausa.net, and then /nets will take you right to that site where you can actually download all of them.
Yeah, if you go to the home page, across the top of the page, you're going to see net preview, which is the upcoming net. You're going to see net recordings. I think net recording comes first, and that's all the recordings. Then the net preview, which will be this current week's net. In fact, this Thursday we're going to be doing camping repair kit or kits. So what do you bring? Zip ties, duct tape, the sewing, tape, repair tape, whatever. And then the next one over is a schedule of nets. We try to do a quarters at a time, and so you can see what's coming up. Also, I believe it's on the right-hand column going down the side, there's a place that you can actually listen to the net, even if you don't have a ham radio. I think there's about a 5-minute delay. So you can listen to it. You won't be able to actually talk or ask questions through that, but you certainly could Skype us questions. We have Skype set up under OA. So what is it? OA USA space net, and you could look that contact up and ask to join it. So there's
what's really funny is that essentially those nets is the lower tech, and really not even that much lower tech version of what we're doing right now. Everybody getting around and talking about a specific topic. So
yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
And on that bombshell, I think we probably better wrap it up. We're getting close to an hour and a half on this session of the Overland Roundtable. So I'm going to go around, give everybody a chance to reintroduce themselves and their website, property, or brand that they are affiliated with, and we'll wrap this up. So we'll start off with Alex, since you are the farthest from my location and time zone, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm Alex from Intense Off-Road, and here's a card I prepared earlier. So, intenseoffroad.com, like you're intense. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all under the same name.
All right, Ben, you are next up in my virtual roundtable lineup here.
Yeah, so it's been RockyMountainOverland.com for all your overland get-together needs out in Colorado and the Rocky Mountain region.
Excellent. All right, Brandon, you're up. The beardless Brandon.
All right, I'm Brandon Libby. I don't need a fun website or anything is.
Well, I
What was
think
that,
the internet
baby
just ate
face?
Brandon.
Yeah, it did.
Brandon Libby at all the places on the internet. So,
Yeah.
all right, Jason, you're up.
I'm Jason Specht, and I'm with Mountain State Overland. And you can find us at mountainstateoverland.com, on YouTube, and in all those fun social media spots that all of us like to hang out on. So,
Right on. Taylor, you're next.
Taylor Adney with The Overland Adventures. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and our website is almost ready to launch. Hopefully it'll be on the web before the next roundtable.
Excellent. Well, let me know as soon as it is, and we'll push it out.
Will do.
And Tom, you're the last one.
Well, thank you. Tom Severin, Badlands Off-Road Adventures. We have a website which is 4x4training.com. And we do have a Facebook page, but I got hacked the other day, so not sure.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so be careful about signing up. This is the real Tom here.
All right, and I am Dan Cole, your moderator for the Overland Roundtable and host of the 4x4 podcast. So thanks again for everybody for joining me and managing to overcome the Googleisms, being able to get this thing going. So, all right, guys, till next time, happy trails, and I'll talk to you all later.
Okay, good night.